And here is the clappity clap. Welcome back, Poggers, to another episode of the Pog State. We've somehow made it to episode 4 of the second season. Oh, how time doth fly. We do have, a lot to talk about in this one because, of course, the first round of LCK Spring 2021 is now behind us. And we've had some interesting results from this particular, from this season. Like, I don't know, man. It's breaking my brain just a little bit. There are a few teams that have defied expectations in ways that make a lot of people happy, and in some ways that make them a little bit sad. I want to start with our third place team at the moment, DRX, because I wasn't expecting to call DRX a third place team. I was actually expecting them, in the bottom 3 rather than the top 3. When we first saw the roster, it was looking like Pioshik and friends. They have 2 trainees on the bottom side of the map in Bao and Becca that weren't necessarily, flooding with expectation at the beginning of the season. However, their performance has just been amazing, if not a little bit infuriating. I've been outspoken about this. The goal graph's not necessarily the most linear. They don't win in the same way that a lot of our other teams do. And if you look at a team like Damwon, right, they suffocate their opponents. They have so much control. Their macro game is so good. Whereas DRX, they just they do whatever the heck they want in the early to mid game, and then they just win. And sometimes they have leads, sometimes they don't, but ultimately it doesn't really seem to matter because they rally behind one another and they pick up victories. And it's just, it's very impressive to see, their match against T1. This is something that we're going to be looking at a little bit deeper in our Pog Moments, which is going to be coming up. But they played a poke composition beautifully. And it was a sight to behold. It was absolutely fantastic. To move further forward, I did mention T1. They haven't necessarily settled on a roster just yet. They've played with 10 different players thus far. And I don't think anyone really knows what the greatest iteration of this team actually looks like just yet. So we are only halfway through the first season of 2021. So there is still a lot of League of Legends yet to be played. However, I think there are a lot of people that are still wondering, what is going to be the greatest T1 that we're going to see. I think, Teddy making his way back and having a really fantastic performance in their last one. Owner as well, making a decent debut with his 2-0 start. But this was against Live Sandbox, so there's still a lot more testing that needs to happen, and we'll see whether T1 do get themselves to a solid roster as we move further into the second round. I guess you can't really talk about the first round robin without discussing our world champions in Damwon Kia. They are sitting at 8-1. 9-1. 9-1? 8-1? Is Max's brain okay? It's 9-1. Because they've already played one game in the second round. So I got very confused. They were 8-1 at the end of the first round robin. So technically I was right there. It should have been 9-0. Fred Brion should not have been able to take them down. So that was an absolute surprise and a bit of a blemish on what could have been an extraordinary first round robin for our world champions who don't look to have too much of a hangover whatsoever. And maybe the only representation of that is dropping one to what was the 10th place team in the league at the time of that match. I think Fred and Brion themselves have actually pulled themselves out of that one relatively well. That being said, still occupying the bottom 4. And if we're talking about just the state of the LCK, going away from talking about individual teams just a little bit, I feel like we do have a top 6 and a bottom 4 that are pretty clearly defined at this stage of the tournament. And I think we're going to be looking for teams like Afrika, Nongshim, and Fred and Brion to try and actually defy some expectation and get some upset wins. Otherwise, it's looking pretty clear-cut who we're going to have moving towards the playoffs. Because I do have to remind you, it's not the 5th place now that's the cutoff, it's the 6th. So we will have 6 teams that will be getting towards those coveted playoff positions. So right now, it's T1 and KT that are in 5th and 6th. And we'll see whether they can move further up the standings as well. Because I think that a lot of people with T1 especially, the eyes are not set on 5th place. I think we're going to be aiming a lot higher than that for a storied organization such as T1. But I do want to get into some of what you guys have been sharing with us. We did have a beloved friend of the Pog State just tweets through to say that he was a big fan. I am, of course, talking about We Did, and We Did, we miss you. All of us miss you. It's just sad not having your, your honesty, sometimes your rage at some of the Korean players, but just genuine We Didness. We miss you, and I hope you can come back on the Pog State sometime soon. SunSun TV, of course, from T1, did message through as well. What did she say? She was just saying that our SunSun combo are extraordinarily powerful, and she's very lucky because we do have SunSun back in the Pog Lab once again to show us what they've been cooking up in their cauldron of delicious League of Legends. Also, Ferrari 43 Abel said that he was liking my Vladimir cosplay for the last episode. That is a combination of me not being very good at applying makeup and also me applying it to the inside of my eyeball. They are going to be, a few of the shout outs from, Twitter and YouTube, of course. Leave your comments if you want to potentially get them read out on the show, and drop us a line on Twitter if you just want to get in touch with the team. We read absolutely everything, and it's an absolute joy. I think that's enough of my waffling. Let's get on with the show. And the show is going to consist of the Pog Moments and the Pog Lab this week. Pog Moments, for those of you who didn't participate in them the first time around. This is when the Vandanalyst gets resurrected, brought back to the Pog State, and is unleashed with all of his analytical prowess on a few of his favorite plays from the previous weeks. And of course, it was SunSun or the Lunar New Year, so we do have a limited pool of plays. However, he's the Vandanalyst. He always finds something worth talking about. And then we have the Pog Lab. This is where Jeesun and Khesun delve into the recesses of solo queue to let us know whether or not some of these LCK strategies work in the real world as well as they work on stage. So, without further ado, here's the Vandanalyst! Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pog Moment. I'm Atlas, joined by the one, the only, the Vandanalyst. This is where he still lives and breathes and thrives. We have sent him home from the LCK broadcast. However, he remains in the Pog State. And here is episode 2, or I guess our second rendition of the Pog Moments. Valdes, did you find any fun ones?
There were some good ones. I felt like there were specifically 3 good ones only.
Okay.
So I was watching all the games and going through all the VODs and combing through them, and I'm like, man, there were some very standard, straightforward games with not any crazy Pog moments, but I found 3, and they're actually all really good. So at least they were hard to find, but at least they were all really good. So looking forward to getting into them. Yeah, perfect. Exactly.
All right, well,
Vandanalyst.
I guess without further ado, we should probably just hop into the first one and let's go over it. Because like you say, there are 3 very special times from what was, it was a difficult week, right? Because we did have the week off for our SunSun, our Lunar New Year. So there were a few less games that you had to comb over. But still, I'm excited that we found some of them. And, having been there and either experienced or watched a bunch of the games, there were definitely some good moments, but you're right. Maybe it was a little bit few and far between. So let's get into number 1.
All right, yeah, so taking a look at this, it's DRX up against T1. And if you watch this fight, you'll probably remember it. It's the most value Kindred Ultimate of all time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen a Kindred Ultimate get more value than this. And this fight, it looks like it's very one-sided, but actually the game was incredibly close up until this moment. I mean, you can even see it in the gold. And it was DRX kind of coming back. I think T1 took the early lead from what I remember, but Pyosik was getting a lot of value with his Kindred. And basically what it is if you're playing up against a Kindred and all 5 members on the other side are grouped up on the Kindred, you can do one of 2 things. Either you have to chain all the CC and make sure that the Kindred goes 100-0, or you need to bait out the ultimate, wait it out, and then you re-engage essentially. T1 had a fantastic engage. The one problem is that the Kindred ultimate went off, and then they blew 3 of their own ultimates straight into the Kindred ultimate, and this is basically what turned the game. And DRX ended up winning this one, and it's just insane that you know, we all know what Pyosik is able to do, where he essentially is defining a jungle meta by himself in some ways, keeping the Kindred pick alive. And he does something like this, and you're like, why doesn't everybody, you know, highly prioritize Kindred? It's because it's really difficult to do something like this. And you know, just talking about the play, like, he gets it off, even though the Rakan ultimate is really perfect timing out of Keria. They're not able to chain it, and the Shockwave comes out of Orianna, the Featherstorm comes out of Xayah, and everybody just runs into the Kindred ultimate. It gets so much insane value. And then Bao is like, yeah, hello, perfect timing for me as the Kaisa to follow up engage, and just totally wipes them on the back side of this. So it's just a really cool
also
play
stealing
overall.
the dragon as well.
Yeah, casually.
Somehow, I don't know how that happened, but
yeah,
I guess this is one of the things. To add some like overarching, I guess, narrative to the story as well. Like, this was a match that was looking like it was going to be very difficult for DRX, and also when you look at the draft, like, this is a poke composition. What have we said about DRX? We've said they're very inconsistent. They struggle to hold on to games because, you know, every single one of their goal graphs is a heart monitor, right? And poke comps are compositions that get snowballed on extraordinarily easily. And even outside of just this one moment, this was DRX playing this poke comp so extraordinarily well. It blew my mind. I was getting frustrated. I wasn't actually casting this one. This was you, Valdes, but I was sitting at home just like gritting my teeth because I don't know how DRX have this, but then they also make some of the ridiculous decisions that they make outside of this sort of game. So this was just a really beautiful performance from a team that, like you say, I think overperformed in this series, but damn, they look good when they do. Yeah.
Again, this is one that they're probably going to have on their highlight reel for a very long time. Like, it's it's just the perfect team fight as a poke comp, as you mentioned. For a Kindred to get that much value is just unheard of, basically. And you see, like, the Gnar ultimate comes in, and the Shockwave, and then the Featherstorm, and you're like, sometimes as T1, you know, I don't even blame them that much. Like, maybe they could have held back, but because even with the timing of the Kindred ultimate, like, you're not gonna get kills, but you still have to like get their health from 100% to, what is it, like 10% that the Kindred health holds you at. So like, yeah, I understand what they were doing, but it was just like way too much value thrown into it. Also, like, sometimes you just put in your inputs and it's like, oh, it's too late. Like, as Orianna, you can buffer your Shockwave. You know, the ball is going out, and essentially, like, he probably could have held back, but it's split-second timing to the point where it's like, you know, I don't even blame Faker for, you know, for throwing that one in. I think maybe the most egregious one might have been the Xayah, right? Where it's like, okay, well, you didn't need to do this, but I understand, like, setting up the feathers in hopes that after the ultimate goes, you know, expires, then you can pull it back and maybe burst them all down. But it ended up just being great follow-up as well from DRX. Like, you know, say what you will about T1's response, but like the fact that they fought through all of that, the Zhonya's timings, and then the timing of the Kaisa ultimate rather, was basically the icing on the cake that that brought DRX the win in the team fight.
Yeah, so congratulations to DRX. They continue to baffle me entirely, but they're definitely a very exciting team to watch. I think I've been pretty outspoken with my opinion on DRX. They confuse the heck out of me, and it's frustrating. However, at least Pyosik is still the darling that we know him as. So, Valdes, what is play number 2 for the Pog Moment?
Well, this was probably already the biggest match of round 2, right? It was like right at the beginning of round 2, and it was the rematch of Hama Life up against DK, Damwon Kia. And just to talk a little bit about what was going into this, like, this was game one, and it was incredibly close, down to the wire. Like, Vista was having the game of his life, like, his Nautilus hooks were insanity, and, Hamalife were clawing back, essentially, a victory against Damwon Kia. They were ahead, but Damwon Kia were putting up an incredible fight, as they usually do. And all of the team fights were super close, even down to like Sion almost killing Nautilus there at the end. So, if we could just like look at the replay again, you can kind of break down the fight where also the bowling ball is essentially what gets it all started, right? The Lilia showing insane value here as it splashes onto the Callista, but also Vista even hits the hook before the sleep goes off. So he was probably even going to get that hook anyway. And then again, perfect Killer Instinct timing comes in, and they essentially wipe out DRX, or Damwon Kia, rather. And Damwon were, like, pushing with the Baron for potentially to ending the game. And maybe even winning in a late-game scenario with the Callista, which would have been insane. But, the play was just too perfect, essentially, that the bowling ball... You see that Khan tries to dodge it and not get the splash, but it barely splashes onto the Callista. And sometimes that's all you need, that split-second, tiny little millimeter maneuver there to make all the difference. And
this was actually an insane series as well, because like it felt like every single game went extraordinarily late, and we were just flipping on these team fights. And in game number one, it was definitely Hamalife that came out on top. Like Chovy getting all of that culling damage there as well. I mean, that's an expensive massage right there, as you like to call them, Valdes.
Yeah. It was just an incredibly close series. Like, Damwon even almost were able to turn this fight, even though it looked pretty doomed, and it eventually was. This is another crazy game where like Chovy pulled out the Lucian mid to start, and he basically made Showmaker look like a fool. Like he was, I think he Flame Horizoned him in this game as well. 21
minutes.
Where
I think it was like 21 minutes that he was ahead by like 100 CS.
300 CS.
Yeah.
And we were all like, oh man, like is Hamalife just gonna win this series? And then, of course, Damwon were just a little bit, just a tiny bit more consistent and stable in their drafting and also in their play. Like, Showmaker made one of the best comebacks of 2021, with being able to come back from that domination that he experienced in this game to actually, making a difference. And just, obviously, it wasn't all Showmaker. Like, Damwon Kia as a team are just so sound that it came down to the entire team being able to pull it back. But the team fight is just so perfect. Like,
Vista was
really couldn't
so
have played
good
it
this
better.
series, man. It was just crazy how good he was. After we'd had conversations previously of like, oh, why is Vista just running it down? And I think this week especially, like, I don't know what happened at Lunar New Year, but the guy took some time off, visited family, and came back well and truly refreshed and ready to destroy some people, because this guy was just so good throughout the entire series. So, can you top that? Do we have another one that's worthy of the Pog moment, Valdes?
We do have a third one, and this one is pretty straightforward. You may remember this, DRX against Afrika. This is another series where we're like, is DRX even good now? Like, what happened? And then they just get this perfect team fight that you're just like, oh man. Like, this is one of those ones that's like one of those VODs you see on YouTube where it's like, they definitely just set this up. Like, this isn't real. Like, 10 friends got into a game and they just made the perfect scenario happen in order to make this clip. Like, it's not real League of Legends. This isn't supposed to happen this cleanly. But in a professional match, by the way, the game was just insane, like, so back and forth. Just a doozy of a game. Like, there's no other way to put it. It was just so close, down to the wire, down to the last moments. 40 minutes in, Elder Drake fight, and then DRX just get literally the perfect engage. Like, there's nothing better. Only, I guess, maybe Alistair could have knocked up 5 people instead of 3. Like, and Zaya gets the perfect late game fight where everybody lines up in a row and she can kite back. I think Mao was casting this game, and he described it very, very well, where it was like, or maybe it was you, I don't know, but one of you guys
were
were
two
like,
of us, so it would have been one of us. Yeah,
one of you guys was really amazing, and so was the other guy as well. But yeah, it was just like the perfect Xayah fight, where you just kite back, all of your feathers go in a line, all of the opponents line up in a row. Your engaged support tank gets the perfect engage, and you see, like the Elder, by the way, is also taken by the Xayah.
Yeah, taken by Xayah doesn't. It's not a normal thing.
And these were the two series. We just saw DRX versus T1 in the first highlight, and now we see DRX in Afrika. These two series were actually where people are like, Bao is really awesome. Like, people are just beginning to be like, wait, DRX have a bottom lane, and Bao is just an insane carry. When did this happen? Again, this is one of the team fights where it's like, man, he's just super clean. Like, it's not all him, obviously, but just the cleanliness, the pristineness of the way the Xayah is played in this scenario is part of the reason people are like, whoa, this guy kind of came out of nowhere, and it's super
Becker,
hyped to have another big,
In that team fight, it was like, Becker that got that 3-man pulverize, like you were talking about, and then it was Bao that was able to follow up so beautifully. And these guys were, the trainees, the rookies making their way up. And you guys can talk about CV Max all you like, but I think that we need to give the credit 100% to these players who have played so well on the big stage without any experience prior to this. Like, yes, they messed around in a couple of Casper Cups and things like that, but outside of it, we haven't really seen anything from these guys, and it's just really, really impressive. And I think 100% the reason why DRX are so much better than we thought they were, because I think you were same as me, Valdes. When we moved into this season, I was like, well, how are they supposed to do it now without, having the stability of a bottom lane that Deft was able to give the team, right? And I guess these words have been pretty tasty over 2021 so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see that they started out mostly invisible. Like, they weren't bad, right? But I think most good players kind of develop this way, unless you're like a superstar, like a faker or something. Like, not every player comes out and just smashes the best mid laner in 1 second, right? They started out mostly unassuming, and we were like, like, it seems like DRX are going to be plagued with like a non-existent bot lane. And then slowly but surely, they just got better and better consistently. Like, that's the one consistent thing about DRX, right? Everything else is kind of just up in the air. The other players are all very good, as we've come to see. But they've just consistently got better and better and better. And I'm really excited to see where they end up, because who knows? I mean, DRX, the more we see them, the more we're like, okay, they just keep winning. They are just still really good.
Yeah.
What is their ceiling? Is it eventually going to be like a crazy playoff best of 5 where DRX take down Damwon? Like, I guess that's possible, although at this point not likely. From not
hugely probable at this stage. I mean, if Fred at Brion got up there, maybe we'd be flipping some coins, but I don't think so. Not at this point in time. That being said, like, does this DRX do better in playoffs? Playoffs were a very difficult time for DRX last year. Same can be said for a team like Gen G. And if they are going to meet each other in the playoffs, like, who is going to be able to rise above what the stigma is around the squad, right? Like, there are a lot of really cool stories that we have to look forward to, especially for DRX. And I'm glad that this week's Pog Moment really is highlighting what's made this team good, why they're good. And I definitely needed the education, Valdes, because I found it very, very hard to follow this squad, right? Like, and also, like, I don't know. There are decisions that they make. There are drafts that they put together that don't necessarily make a lot of sense. They commit a lot of sins, one could say. But despite the heart monitor graphs and things like this, like, they still put W's on the board, and that is in the end the most important part. I don't think I can even predict like who's going to be getting all of those Pog moments either outside of Damwon Kia. So it is definitely very, very exciting. So thank you so much for being on the Pog moments for this particular episode. Looking forward to more. See you later, Mr. Vandanalyst. Now, if you listen to this, you can pause, maybe go and watch some LCK clips on YouTube, get yourself a cracker or a cup of tea, something like that. But as soon as you press play again, we're going to be back with some sweet, sweet Pog Lab. Oh, baby. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pog Lab. I'm Atlas, and I have with me two mad scientists, Khesun and Jeesun. These two have been cooking up something extra special for us, of course. I am going to ask quickly, guys, how was your SunSun holiday? Did you guys get up to anything interesting, just seeing family, things like that?
No, because there's a regulation because
Oh,
of
no.
the virus, so we cannot actually gather up when the group has more than 5 people.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually had to set outside of the door and switch in order to say hi to our grandparents. Some of the people were staying in the car, and some went up and said hi, some New Year wishes, and came right out. The second group goes in. That's how it went on my side.
So you had it's like a New Year queue. Like you stand in the queue and now it's my turn. Now I get to have a happy New Year. Oh no, that's not how it's supposed to work. Hopefully things get better. How about you, Khesun? Was yours a little bit better than that?
Oh, it was pretty much the same. It was very short. I just stayed with my direct family, basically, with my brother and my mom. Nothing special. Just hanging out.
Definitely did better than me. I wasn't able to get back to Australia in that one weekend, so I stayed at home. Played some TFT mostly. That was my SunSun, but it was good. It was nice to have a week off, and just hang out. But you guys were also busy cooking up some more Pog Lab extravagancies. And what do you have prepared for us today?
Today we tried the Tia's bottom duo comp, Senna with Heimerdinger, fasting Senna. And Heimerdinger is actually the main DPS, but still Senna does also a lot of damage. We really wanted to try this because we actually played Senna Heimerdinger comp a lot in solo queue last year when we were playing with our own accounts. So we were looking forward to seeing a great synergy with the SunSun duo.
Okay, right? I'm excited about this. Were you guys successful, Khesun? Would you say that it was definitely the synergy that you were aiming for, or were there some hiccups?
I think it went pretty smoothly, actually. We were very used to the champions, and it was we already played a bunch of it before, so it went very smoothly. No really big problems.
So this was the perfect time for Ghost and Beryl to bring it back. This was the duo that the SunSun were ready to pilot. Beautiful. I love it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go into the first one. You guys can explain with all of your extreme knowledge exactly how you're supposed to play out this laning phase, because from what I saw and from what I've seen in the past, this duo is probably one of the most toxic that you can play in the laning phase. It is just disgusting.
So Senna and Heimerdinger, they are super strong. Starting from level 1, they have a very long range, and they have huge poke damage starting from the get-go. And I think Khesun is actually one of the premier Heimerdinger player. So
I would
like
believe
to
it.
elaborate the laning phase mechanics?
Right, so as Heimerdinger, you are farming, you're the one that's CSing, so Heimerdinger is one of the harder champs to CS with, which you have to get a lot of practice in. I'm assuming Beryl did a great job in itself as a support player. But yeah, and also so the laning phase goes as you're constantly pushing with your poke, you're poking down the enemies, and you have heals from Senna, and you're constantly getting tower pressure and locking them down. And you have really good CC setup too. So you can set up ganks, and also you have very good counter engage, as in you have very lots of damage. So if they try to force an engage, you can very easily set them down and get a kill off that. You can also get a lot of plates while you're constantly attacking the you're pushing and then hitting the tower with your Senna and Heimerdinger.
I was just gonna say, like, I can see in this particular game you're against Khesun Morgana, which is, you know, a duo with a fair bit of range themselves, decent amount of all-in potential. You were talking about like CC setup and stuff like that. When we saw Ghost and Beryl piloting this, I believe they were into like something like a Nautilus or a Leona, and it was a different scenario. Would you say that this is more suited against, you know, a mage support, or is this something used to punish melee supports?
Yeah, it's definitely better against melee supports, as well as a short-range AD carry, because you outrange them by a lot, especially like against like a Kai'Sa, because Beryl and Ghost played it against a Kai'Sa Nautilus, so they're very short-range and want to engage. And also, Heimerdinger is very good against hook champions, because you can play around your turret and hide behind it, which makes it very hard to look for hooks.
So we
that's really cool.
To try the Beryl's mechanic landing the turret right before Nautilus casts the hook. But well, we did try, but we were not on sync with the Nautilus. Actually, he was keep hooking nowhere, so we were not able to show the exact same level of mechanic. But there was this one moment where Khesun actually was able to hide behind the turret and save from run away from the hook. And it's really good because once Senna's Lancer Q during the laning phase, with the slow, I think Heimerdinger and Senna together can like bully the lane.
And is there anything different that you need to do as far as setup, like different runes that you're going to take if you're going to be playing this particular setup with the Heimerdinger and Senna? What are some of the adjustments that you make?
So first off, in the first game, actually, when I first recalled, I just wanted to complete the most expensive item for the Kraken Slayer. But Khesun actually recommended me to go for Quick Sacks first, and also told me to go for the Grievous when the Executioner Call. Am I right?
Yeah, Executioner's Calling.
Yeah, because we were playing up against Yumi, and because he told me because I don't need extra damage on the minion because Khesun is the one actually farming up the CS. So I think it's really good if you can make those kind of rotation during the laning phase.
Okay, and so making slight adjustments based on being fasting center instead of being the farming center as well, because like I think part of the reason why you can't actually run center as the carry in this lane is because Heimerdinger steals all the CS all the time. Like if you've had some of those troll games where someone decides they want to pick support Heimerdinger, it's like if you're playing AD, it's just an awful time. So it's sort of how it has to work, and I think it works so much better just because like the consistent poke out of center is disgusting, especially in a lane like this. And then they get annoyed, and then they engage, and then there's 3 turrets all shooting them, and then you make one of them really big. Like, is there a priority with the Heimerdinger build as well? I know a lot of Heimerdinger builds, you focus rockets if you're like playing in mid lane, just so that you can get all of that extra burst damage and wave clear. Is that something that you also focus on in the duo lane, or is there more of a focus on turrets? Is there anything that changes there?
I still think you definitely want to usually max W your rockets. It does more poke and it's much more reliable than the turrets, because the turrets only like pop off when they're coming in and they don't have options to kill it beforehand. So like your W is just much more of a reliable skill. As long as you can hit it, which is not that hard, as long as they're like running at you.
And especially if you're a professional such as Khesun on the Heimerdinger himself. I do have a very important question to ask you as well. As a Heimerdinger main, which is the greatest Heimerdinger skin?
I think the Dragon Keeper, or whatever it's called, the Dragon skin is the best. It's hilarious. I love it.
Oh, he was going so well. It was such a good Pog Lab until this moment where he forgot that Alien Invasion Heimerdinger is just the best skin in the game. And also, do you toggle Swag Walk or do you keep his new walk?
I think I didn't know that he had 2 walks actually.
Well, there was an update and everyone was very up in arms because Heimerdinger's old walk was one of the swaggiest things in the world. And now you can toggle between them. So next time, this is a bit of an Atlas lesson. Next time, make sure that you adjust the walk so that Heimerdinger is walking exactly how he's supposed to, like an absolute boss. You are absolutely welcome. Is there anything else? Any other nuances that you guys found? Because I imagine you guys were mostly just having a really good time.
Yeah, so during the laning phase, there are some typical engages that you can do. You know, either Heimerdinger or Senna can land their root or stun, and then the lane partner can follow up with the second crowd control. So we had a lot of winning trees based on those combos. But moving on to the later stage of the game, nothing's much that special because you just have to play like just normal AD carry or mage champion. And you have to make sure to stay in the backline. So there were some games where actually there were a lot of assassins like Katarina. So we get like deleted the moment she just like hops on to us. So moving on to the later phase, yeah, you have to keep in mind that you do have a lot of damage output, but just like ordinary marksman and mage champion, you have to be in the backline, do your best to stay intact.
I imagine that that's probably the case. And also it's like this weird feeling if I'm playing Senna as I'm sort of a support in the lane, but then in the later stages, you are actually just an AD carry. So your mindset has to sort of be in both support mode and carry mode at the same time because Senna's a bit busted like that. We actually saw, you know, in the example in the LCK, Ghost was doing ridiculous amounts of work. Did you notice anything to do with, you know, Senna's recent buffs and things like that? Did you find like the attack speed made it a little bit easier than maybe when you were playing it last time around, like with the fact that her wind-up speed is so much more forgiving?
Yeah, that was also really helpful, especially in the later phase. She also can just farm. So with that extra attack speed, it made it a lot easier for me to farm because I actually suck at farming. So that's why I actually like questing Senna, because I just like make Khesun to do everything during the laning phase. I just like Q in the backline.
Perfect.
And then in the later phase, I have massive damage, I have attack speed, I can just pick up all the CS I want. So I think Senna is pretty busted right now. And also there were some fights where like Khesun was left all alone in the lane. And then Senna just comes up like a Superman, she heals up, saves him when he gets engaged. So that was also really cool.
I think it's just it's a pretty ridiculous lane. Do you guys have any examples of what it's like to get ganked as Senna+Heimerdinger? Because I could imagine that would have been a bit of fun as well.
So I think Senna and Heimerdinger actually has a very high survivability, not only because of the like turret of Heimerdinger. At the same time, Senna's E skill also like provide her a lot more space to get away from the opponent jungler. And then we can turn it around with our crowd control.
And also the amount of time that, you know, people waste just getting shot by turrets while you guys are running away with the extra movement speed just seems ridiculous. I'm having a look at this example right here, and Khesun, you really are a Heimerdinger player. 100%. I mean, I swear most of playing Heimerdinger is understanding psychology, because all you're trying to do is bait people into walking at you. And so you just have to taunt everyone over and over again. That's why the swag walk is so incredibly important. But this is definitely some vintage Heimerdinger play, and I'm very impressed, Khesun. Very nice work.
Thank you. Comp was extremely fun. I love playing it again. And it's also very unique as with fasting Senna, you're both getting gold. Like Senna farms off the souls, and it was buffed to 8 gold, so it's quite a bit of gold. So both are getting items, and it's like a double carry comp in the bot lane. You have an AD carry and an AP carry both at the same time, which is very unique. And they're both like very strong hard carries, which can carry it out to late game. So you just need some stability in the top side with hopefully some tanks, hopefully some meat shields to help you out.
Yep.
Yeah,
no, it's
really good.
Pretty good.
It actually helps you guys to find the damage balance, because most of people try to find the AP AD damage balance in the mid jungle or maybe top jungle. But by picking Heimerdinger for support role, actually this opens up more space in terms of the champion pool options on the top side of the map.
And in solo queue as well, I don't know whether this is the same for elsewhere around the world. I think it's a little bit different here in Korea, but half the time you see people picking Yasuo, Zed, Master Yi comps all over. It doesn't actually matter which ELO you're in either. Like, it's just, if you're not playing the flashy assassins, then you're playing League of Legends wrong. And basically, if you've got like fasting Senna+Heimerdinger in the bottom lane, and then everyone else is building armor, Heimer comes in and kills everyone. You like press Zhonya's and watch your turrets eat everyone alive. It just sounds absolutely fantastic. Like the hard counter to Korean solo queue. And hopefully that works elsewhere as well. If there are people that do want to play this at home, if you could just take us through, you don't have to go in too deep, but like just a rough item build plus some keystones and, you know, which runes are important.
And with Senna, it's a very normal fasting Senna, but with an updated new build, which is Kraken Slayer into Guinsoo's Rage Blade. Yeah, which is a very strong standard combo. And then after that, it's very standard like AD carry items with Rapid Fire Cannon or Runins. You can also build World Dominates, which is very strong on Senna. So it's just very standard build standalone.
Is there anything about like sort of like timings that you want to go for? Is it like you feel extremely strong after you get Rage Blade? Do you need to rush towards the Kraken Slayer first? Is there some flexibility? Because you were talking about, you know, fitting in executioners. Is this the sort of type of build where you can just sort of like feel it out as you go along, or are you looking for these power spikes really hard?
I'd say for Senna, the power spikes are like Russian Kraken is obviously the best. You can build in extra like executioners if you need them. Also the Rage, I think it's called Rage Knife, the item before Rage Blade, is extremely efficient on Senna currently. Like they're nothing next patch on 11.5, I believe. But the interaction is like super strong, so just rushing that item is super helpful, and it's a lot of damage, especially as a fasting Senna where you have the extra souls to boost up your crit.
Yeah, the souls are actually ridiculous. And then you get lifesteal, I think, after you reach 100% or something like that. And so it all just sort of like works in on itself. It's almost like you build a Rage Blade and you actually get a Bloodthirster for it because you get extra lifesteal.
You don't get the lifesteal.
You don't
get the lifesteal with Rage Blade. It converts all the crit into extra damage, so it makes it your crit chance 0. So you don't get the extra lifesteal, but instead you scale infinitely. You keep getting extra damage over.
So it just wow, right. And so it sort of transitions what would have been lifesteal and survivability into just damage. That was a nuance that I didn't actually get with the interaction between Senna's passive and the Rage Blade. That's super cool. That's, oh my god, no wonder Deft was doing so much damage that first time that he played it as well. I remember having a look at the Twitch chat during that game, and everyone was like, this build is going to lose the game. And no, that's not how that one works, actually, guys. It's just extraordinarily powerful. Are there any things that you that are different about playing Heimerdinger on the bottom side as well? Do you change up anything runes and items wise, or is it all pretty standard mage stuff?
Yeah, it's pretty standard mage stuff. You usually want to take Comet on Heimerdinger because of the interactions with the turrets, where the Comet cooldown is reduced by every single turret auto. So it's like very ludicrous. It's not like, yeah, you get a lot of Comets basically. You're not looking for like hitting a lot of Comets, you're just getting as much of them as possible. And then the build is standard mage build. Like you usually want a Zhonya's second or third. Zhonya's is very good on Heimerdinger, obviously. But other than that, it's very standard mage items, whatever you need, depending on the situation.
And then there's also, I guess, the question of like, what do you prioritize your ultimate on as well with Heimerdinger? Is it always big turret every single time? It's been a while since I've really delved deep into my Heimerdinger mechanics.
So usually, the thing about Heimerdinger ult is you have to use it with one of your skills, right? But with your W and E, it puts it on cooldown as you use it, but it has its own scaling on the ult. So if you're maxing W, using it on your ult on W is sometimes like less effective, obviously, because you're wasting your maxed ability. So as your turret, and the turret doesn't take a cooldown on your ult, so it's like a free ult charge. So it's usually best like that. In mid game, a lot of times you want to use it on the grenade for an AoE stun. It's a very huge stun and a slow. And it's pretty good damage too, so if you're following up, because when they're engaging on you, it's very easy to pop the turret, alt turret, to do damage. But when you're chasing them down, it's very hard to utilize that alt turret. So it's much better to go for the grenade to shut them down and just go for a massive nuke.
Yeah, and it almost makes the grenade possible to hit. That's why I stopped playing Heimerdinger, is because grenades were impossible to land, and it felt like I didn't have that ability, and it was very frustrating. Old man hands are also part of the problem. Okay, so back to you, Jeesun. Would you recommend Senna+Heimerdinger for us plebeians to play in solo queue? What was the verdict in the end?
I do, because first off, I think like solo queue players actually end up taking really hard to realize the extra attack range that Senna gets with the passive stacks, and also the rocket fire cannon. So moving on to the later phase, actually they walk into the Senna's auto range with the extra range with the item. And then once they get an auto from Senna, they get slowed and they get engaged, and that's the over of the game. So they're just like wandering around the map looking for some target, but actually they're the one getting hunted down.
It's perfect. It's the mind games upon mind games. It's like, not only are you playing the Senna mind game with all the range, but you're also playing the Heimer mind game with, come and gank me. Look at how far we're pushed up. You should probably gank us. It's going to be totally fine. Don't worry. And then the jungler dies, and then everyone's upset, and then you guys win the game. I reckon this was a no-brainer. I think I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 as well. Heimerdinger Senna. If you're playing it, definitely fantastic. If you're playing against it, dodge. Dodge fast and as quickly as you possibly can, because it's just disgusting. Thank you so much once again, our SunSun duo, for the fantastic play and also the fantastic Pog Lab experience once again. I do want to shout out the fact that we did see Fasting Senna and Seraphine in Challenger just a few days ago. Another disgusting one. So if you guys want to flex over to that, you certainly can. It's revolting. It's just CC everywhere. Disgusting stuff. So another one that you could mix with your Fasting Senna as well. But that will do us for the Pog Lab. Thank you so much, guys, for being on the show. And I'm looking forward to more of the mad science. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Of course, if you were to give us a review or leave a comment or like or subscribe or do all of that sort of stuff, that would help us immensely. We want to, you know, try and get to some sponsorship type situations, and you can help us get there, and that would be super cool. Remember, the Doritos thing. Remember the Doritos thing? God, it would be amazing. We have a huge episode coming up in the next one as well. A couple of weeks' time, and Jonghyun is coming over from the Korean analyst desk, and she is going to be joining our resident memeologist and bringing you all of the juicy Korean memes. Going to be really exciting to have her on the show. And of course, Chronicler is also back with some more Pog poetry. You do not want to miss it. Thank you so much for watching another episode of the Pog State, and we'll see you in the next one.